Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. I wasn't sure I was going to do something for Thursdays because I usually don't. So I record this on Wednesday nights. For those of you that have continually listened to me, I've been a little inconsistent lately. Thursdays have been kind of hard for me, or Wednesday nights, to record for Thursday to figure out what I was going to do. But tonight's topic was just so interesting I had to stop and first collect my breath and understand how stupid people can be. The manipulation of language, especially when it comes to guns, is mind-blowing. Case in point, tonight's topic. So there's a bill that's going around, and thank you, Brandon Herrera, because you're cool in general, and I'd love to go down to your shooting range and, have a range day with you. I'm nowhere near as big as you are. I probably won't ever be, unless good Lord allows it to be and I gain a large following. But zombie guns. So I looked into this. What the hell is a zombie gun? That was my first thing. Brandon kind of explained it, and then I looked at the bill itself and looked a little bit into it more, a lot more into it than what I wanted to. But it's another manipulation by gun grabbers to go after guns that aren't used in crimes. So what a zombie gun is a parts kit that is brought into the United States, which is already destroyed by the ATF's own standards. So I don't know how they're going to manipulate this to get around some of the things here, but I digress. That you can make into new guns again. Okay, the whole point of this is the ATF's rules for import of such a thing as a zombie gun or a ghost gun, or not a ghost gun, a kit, a gun kit, or a parts kit, let's be more correct here, is that you can finish demilling the pieces. So having done this before with AKs, you have to take the receiver pieces off of the trunnion unless you get one that's already been completely demilled. That means the rivets have been drilled out, the pins have been drilled out in the Kalashnikov's case. And then you basically reassemble the gun with an American receiver, which turns the gun into an American gun because that's the regulated part by the ATF by their own rule and statute. And then you have to use so many parts using in 922R compliant to be 922R compliant. So you have to have, I think it's 7 or 10. I don't know. This is the part where I have slept since I built mine, because I did the number and then added 2 more parts, as I remember myself, just to be careful. So stocks are a good way to change a parts kit into a 922R compliant. Trigger groups naturally have to be American made. Barrels are another thing that has to be American made. A magazine, according to the 922R rules, is classed as an American part, even though you can swap them out with different pieces. The receiver itself has to be American made. But I digress. Why I think this is such a stupid ass bill is there is not a criminal one that's going to take a parts kit of any kind and assemble a firearm. Here's where I'm going with this. To assemble my AK, to build my AK, and yes, I built my AK, you have to have some knowledge that a criminal is not going to do. Case in point, the receiver itself. Can you buy a 80% receiver? Absolutely. You know what an 80% receiver in the AK world consists of? A folded piece of sheet metal that's 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeters thick that has little marks to where you know where to drill for the rivets. That's it. Everything else you have to mill into the damn thing yourself. You have to have access to end mills. You have to have access to presses. You have to have access, and I'm not talking little presses, or you have to have access to specialty equipment that you can use in lieu of a press, which still isn't cheap. and isn't something you can just fabricate out of Nowhereville without having a hell of a lot more knowledge than your average criminal. There's a reason why criminals are criminals, because they can't get a normal job, and they prey upon us that do work for a living. So, you're also going to need to know how to headspace said weapon when you put the barrel in and make it all work correctly. So some of that takes some fitting, some of that takes some knowledge, specifically the head spacing piece. Now, if you don't know what head spacing is, it's the gap in which the chamber of the round, or the chamber of the barrel, or the chamber of the gun, let's be more correct, interfaces with the bolt face and supports the cartridge case itself. Now, why is that gap important? Because too much of a gap and the brass is unsupported and therefore will blow out, thus causing a kaboom, possibly, in some cases, a really bad kaboom. Or it's going to be too shallow, too small, and the gun will not function correctly. So this isn't something you just figure out. You know, when something like an AR-15, it's made specifically so that it head spaces itself, because the upper receiver has a slot cut in it that's to a certain dimension. The barrel has the chamber in it, right? And it has a pin that interfaces with that slot such that you cannot your head spacing is basically corrected with that piece alone if it's made to spec. Okay? Still good idea to check the head space on an AR-15, even with a build with a no-go gauge, just to make sure that, you know, you're safe. Because when you're doing this stuff, remember what we're doing in the 2A community. We are using explosive force that is extremely proximate to our head and to our extremities. So this is not as easy as some people like to make it seem. Now, the AR is built and manufactured in such a way that machined in such a way that it is kind of dummy-proof. It was kind of designed during the Cold War, the height of the Cold War, where they envisioned us being in this nuclear wasteland and possibly having to build weapons in basements. And that's why you could build AR-15s anywhere. It's a decentralized design based around a philosophy that the United States military has had. And this goes back to being able to repair a gun in the field, or to be able to take it to an armorer, and the armorer to have a set number of parts that they know are wear items, and they can replace them either on base or even in the field. Okay? In the Eastern world, in the Kalashnikov world, that's not a thing. You hear about those guys that, you know, in Afghanistan and the Middle East that basically pound on AKs and get them to work again. Yes, that's true, because AK is easy to maintain. However, replacing stuff, you have to have some specialty equipment. Placing the barrel in an AK, you have to seat it with a press. You can, I suppose, pound on it with a hammer or something until it seats close to it. But then what happens if you overcorrect it and it's now too deep, and now the head space is off the other way? It's too shallow. The gun won't cycle. Okay? Go forward. Rivets. Yeah, you can put a rivet in, and you can do it by hand. Okay? You can do that part. Well, that's not rocket science. It's not some sort of sacred cow. You can do it. Okay? I did that with my rear receiver on my 74. The rear rivet, that is. The rear trunnion rivet, the long rivet. Because I didn't have access to the correct press dies to make it do what it needed to do to give it the perfect crown. So I rounded it, because I had been watching Mel 64 when he was still allowed. I think he's on Rumble, where he used to show off how to build AKs, or how he built them, because that was his hobby. And I watched what he did, because I wanted to learn everything I possibly could before I attempted this myself, because this was a goal. And the idea isn't for me with building an AK or using a parts kit was to learn everything I could about the platform. And as crazy as I am about Kalashnikovs, and all of my close friends know that I am a crazy Kalashnikov guy, it was a goal to build one. Okay? Because, let's be honest, when you build an AR-15, you're not building. You're just assembling. It is the Lego gun. You're taking parts that are machined to a certain spec, and you're just assembling them, usually with bench tools and an armorer's wrench. That's all you need for an AR-15. For an AK, you need a lot of specialty tools, and that's why they're built that way. They are built that way, and how they become cheap, or cheaper to build, is once you've invested in that machining setup and those toolkits, you can reuse them over and over and over and over and over. So it's economy of scale. The more you manufacture, the cheaper it begins, or it gets. Now, that's how the Russians dealt with this. In the Russian parlance, you would wear your gun out, and they would just hand you a new one. In the United States parlance, we'd look at the gun and say, oh, what's war on it? Well, we can replace that. There's not one part on the AR-15 you couldn't find a replacement for. That's why it's America's gun, is because it is so customizable and you can do all these other things. But these parts kits that they're regulating usually are Kalashnikov, roller delay guns, so again, another gun I love. But you're going to need a press for that thing too, and a welder, and you're going to need to know how to put the whole damn thing together. And I don't see anyone, any criminal, that is going to take the time and effort to learn how to do this consistently and make a functioning gun that isn't going to blow up in their damn hand without having a ton of knowledge. So I agree with Brandon Herrera. This is going to do nothing. What's even funnier is in the bill, what they've actually said is that if you are in possession of one of these and they pass the law, number one, I'd like to know how they're going to enforce this, because there are thousands of them built in the United States by hobbyists, and it's never been illegal to make a gun since our founding of our country. If you're on your own, that's what the draw of parts kits are. There was a point in time where parts kits were cheaper, a lot cheaper, so you could build said gun and learn about it at a lot cheaper price. Nowadays, if you buy a parts kit for a Kalashnikov specifically, especially a Russian parts kit because of the embargoes that are going on, you're paying $1,000 for just the parts. You know, for an AK-74, for a Bulgarian 74, I was lucky to get mine for $550 4 years ago, or 5 years ago. No, it was 4 years ago. Now they're going for $1,100, and a 7.62x39 is going for like $2,000 for parts kits that I've seen, because they have the original Izhevets, and Malot, and Tula, the Russian factory markings. Those parts kits are now at a premium because, one, we can't get them anymore because the Russian Federation is embargoed. Two, these were demilled military guns, Soviet guns, that were in service in some other country that they demilled and sold the parts to try to make some money back so they could buy new weapons to furnish their military. You know, if you look at Apex Guns, Apex Gun Parts, they sell a lot of surplus parts, and they sell parts kits. You know, they recently had a ton of G3s come in from Greece and from Portugal, where they had demilled the G3 rifle. They're not using it anymore. They have replaced their rifles. So to recoup some of those costs, they put the parts kits after they demilled them to the military, or not military spec, the ATF specifications, which is basically destroying the gun. When they do gun buybacks, they have to follow the ATF's destruction of firearms. But where I was going in this bill is they're saying you have to destroy every part of the gun. How do you do that? Do you make a metal kiln and melt the gun down? I don't know of a place where you can shred said parts, metal parts of this caliber. You know, these are case-hardened steel parts. You're going to shred them? I know they exist, but they're not in any scale. And that's if you're going to comply. And after all the regulations that have came out, I see this one being followed the least. Because the people that have it, how are you going to know it was produced somewhere else from a parts kit? It has a serial number. Seriously. Mine does. It's an American-made receiver. It's an American-made gun by the ATF's own standard. So unless some standards change, there's no way that this is enforceable. But yet it's one of those buzzwords that let's just be honest, the left uses and gun grabbers to try to disarm the American citizen. So yeah, I'm a little fired up. It makes no damn sense. And they're manipulating language yet again, just like full semi-automatic. I still can't believe a military man gave that term to them to use in a CNN commentary section about the AR-15. Short-barreled rifle? Is that really more dangerous? You know? A ghost gun? That's what started this conversation around zombie kits or zombie guns. Now that's the new term coined. You know, it's the manipulation of language that we need to be very careful about when Congress or anyone in power tries to start acting like they're experts when they know nothing. And if you've been in the 2A as long as I have, been a follower of the 2A, been an advocate for the 2A, been shooting as long as I have, you listen to these people speak and you know they're idiots. And that's what made me start looking at the other things that they were talking about or speaking to with authority to see if they actually knew what the hell they were talking about. Turns out they don't. So why the hell are they there? Probably to line their pockets. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.